For today's heist, I'm reviewing A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the new Game of Thrones spin-off show, and the quote of today's video is, "In every man there are many men, so be brave, be just, be tall." Today I'll be reviewing A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the highly anticipated Game of Thrones spin-off show. And if you enjoyed today's video, I really hope that you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hopefully watch and like future videos as well. I also hope that you follow Popcorn Heist on Instagram, where there are reels and trivia on Tuesdays and polls on Saturday. And follow Popcorn Heist on Twitter. And last but not least, follow Popcorn Heist on Letterboxd as well. Just for context, so you know the perspective that I'm coming at this show with, I have read the 3 novellas that the show is beginning to cover this season, covering just the first novella. So I will be reviewing this season with some context of the source material that it's adapting. In this review, I'll be talking about the ending and all of the episodes in season 1 of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So this is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen the show and you do not want to spoil it for yourself, please turn away now. I am just covering season 1, so I will not be spoiling the other 2 novellas that this story is going to cover in future seasons. I will be avoiding major spoilers from House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, so if you haven't seen those shows, you are safe to continue watching this video. I also want to hear what you thought of this season, so comment down below what was your favorite and least favorite part of this season. At Popcorn Heist, we choose a quote every video, and the quote of today's video is, "In every man there are many men, so be brave, be just, be tall," which is said by Sir Lionel Baratheon to our main character, Dunk. I think true knighthood is one of the main themes of this show, as it was a theme in Game of Thrones as well, but it really is the main core thrust of this show, showing that knighthood might come from places where you might not expect it. Whether you're highborn or a lowborn hedge knight, you can always choose to be brave and be just and protect the innocent. And knighthood and justness doesn't come from the title of being a knight, it comes from the choices that every person has to make. I think it's heavily implied that Dunk is not actually a knight, which makes the irony that he is actually the most knightly character and the one who protects the innocent even better. And although he might be a little bit dull at times, I feel like he's one of the most purely good characters in the Game of Thrones universe, who really shows that he is willing to protect the innocent and even put himself in harm's way to do the right thing. I love spending time with Dunk. I loved learning more about him. It was really like he jumped right off the page of the novel. And I loved his dynamic with Egg. I feel like those 2 actors really had a ton of chemistry. I think because the show isn't tackling huge action sequences and fights for the throne like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, you have a little bit more time to breathe with these characters and see them just spend time together and talk to one another. So I think that really helped Dunk and Egg establish their dynamic. I think something I was nervous about coming into this show that I think it did pretty successfully was taking some of the inner dialogue in Dunk's mind and finding ways to put it on screen, whether it be through a flashback or through him talking to a horse. I think that's a difficult thing to do when adapting a book, especially a book with so much inner monologue. And I think the show did a good job conveying what it needed to convey from Dunk's head. Also, the entire book happens from Dunk's perspective, and I think the show did a successful job in creating some scenes that aren't from Dunk's perspective. For example, the scene where Egg is training the horses, which ends up coming in handy later in the Trial of the Seven. I also think the show as a whole did a good job of incorporating comedy, which you don't really get in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon when the stakes are a bit higher. At times it kind of felt like a show like The Office, where there's like awkward interactions and people aren't saying the right things to one another, while still delivering the heartfelt moments and stakes and action sequences that are both in the novel and expected when you're in this Game of Thrones universe. I also think the show did a great job of still making you feel like you were in the Game of Thrones universe, but also not being afraid to adapt things from the books that weren't in the Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon shows. For example, the white Kingsguard uniforms I thought looked awesome. The different armor pieces and Lionel Baratheon's helmet with the antlers on it and Aryann's dragon helmet. I think when Game of Thrones was established in the universe, they were sometimes afraid to use them because they could look a little bit cartoonish, but I liked that this show incorporated those things and actually put some color on the screen. It made it feel like a much more unique fantasy universe. Although the show takes place basically in one town and the universe doesn't feel as expansive, you do get a lot of cool things that really immerse you in the universe. And I think a lot of what they added to the novel really worked. Lionel Baratheon really isn't that much of a character in the novel, and he was a huge character in the show. One of the most fun characters in the whole season. So I think he was a great addition. Him and Dunk had great chemistry, and when he comes to Dunk's aid in the Battle of the Seven, you actually understand why, and you're pretty excited that this character that we've been spending so much time with is here to help Dunk. I think the show's expansion throughout the early episodes of characters like Sir Robin and the Fossaways made the Trial of the Seven even better, because you had all of these people show up for Duncan, and it made it feel like more of a squad who was there to support him. I also think the addition of the 2 sex workers was a good addition as well. They're also low-born characters, so they're able to contribute to the theme that the high-born so-called knights don't really care about the low-born and are just using them, which is similar to how they treat Dunk throughout the show. I think the early episodes of the show were super fun. It really made it feel like you were at this tourney, which I know George R.R. Martin loves tourneys, and they never really got to do a full one Game of Thrones, so you really feel like you're at this tourney for like a week with these characters, enjoying partying and watching the jousting with them. And because these earlier episodes are lower stakes, you kind of just enjoy that time with the characters, while also building up to the final climax, the Trial of the Seven. One knight who really lives up to his vows is the heir to the Iron Throne, Prince Baelor, who shows up for Duncan and shows that he really is a just character and would have been a great king to the realm. That moment where he shows up to support Ser Duncan in the Trial of the Seven and be the final combatant, and the Game of Thrones theme song plays.
I will take Ser Duncan's side.
Such a great moment, such a triumphant moment in the show. The Trial of the Seven was a great episode, great climax to the story. I will say I did enjoy the flashback, but it did kind of take the wind out of the momentum of the trial. It was a really long sequence, and it was all added as compared to the novel. I think the main success of it is that it shows the parallels between Dunk becoming a squire and Egg becoming a squire, but it is a very long sequence and it is in the middle of our climax, so I think it changed the pacing of that episode a little bit. So although I did like the flashback, I think it may have been a little bit too long, or maybe misplaced, that it broke the tension in the trial. But once the trial got going, it was done so well. It was really brutal. There was times where I was like, I can't believe Dunk is even surviving this. I don't remember in the novel that he almost died, but I think that was a really great moment. Seeing both Egg and Sir Arlen in his memory say, get up, and him getting up and finishing the trial. So sad when you see Prince Baelor take off his helmet and go down. It's like, that was the hope for the realm. Who knows where history would have went if he could have taken the Iron Throne and become king, especially because he is such a just character. R.I.P. Prince Baelor. I think the finale was really just pushing us into the next phase of the story, kind of the come down from such a intense climax episode last episode. So I think the finale felt a little bit tame, but it kind of has to be that way just to keep the story continuing. I got a little bit emotional when Dunk and Egg are riding into the distance and you see Sir Arlen on his horse go the opposite direction. I actually kind of wish that that was the last scene rather than Maekar wondering where Egg is, although it is kind of funny that Maekar did not approve Egg going with Dunk. Although it didn't have some of the political intrigue and sprawling action sequences like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, I don't think that's what it was meant for, and I do think it was still just as important to the universe. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, they all focus on succession to the Iron Throne, and this show had a huge impact to the future of the succession of the Targaryen dynasty, therefore having a huge implication on the events of Game of Thrones. And I think the change in tone and the focus on just a handful of characters made it very successful in getting the themes it needed to across. Ultimately, I think this was a great season of TV and a great adaptation of the Hedge Knight novella. I know it went by a little bit quickly. It's only 6 short episodes this season. Usually I'm very against the movement of TV shows to shorter seasons, but I think it works in this case. It's adapting a really short novel, and they already added a lot of filler. I think if you added any more filler or any more fluff, you would have kind of felt it and it would have taken away from the quality of the show. It seems like moving forward, they're going to release seasons of this TV show annually, and I think that's a better move. Keep the seasons shorter, don't add too much fluff, keep the quality high, and release them on an annual basis. So yeah, the season went by very quickly, but I think in the end, we got a better product because of it. And I'm really excited for the future of this TV show. I loved the other 2 novels that were released, which will likely be the next 2 seasons. And I've heard that they're gonna surpass the novels even if they're not written, and probably cover Dunk and Egg as they grow up over many, many years. I'm interested to see just how many seasons they're able to make, how they'll handle time jumps as the characters grow up. I've heard rumblings that they may do like 5 seasons quickly, then take a long break, then do another 5 seasons, then do a long break again and do another 5 seasons. I don't know if that's true. I think we'll have to see how it plays out as the show gets produced. But either way, I'm super excited for the future. I really do hope they cover all of Dunk and Egg's life. And although it didn't go too well when Game of Thrones had to go off script and go past the subject material, I'm hoping that these stories get told. I'm hoping that the showrunner won't make the same mistakes and we'll be able to really see Dunk and Egg grow through their lives. So all in all, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, I am excited to be back in Westeros. I'm excited to be introduced to this new generation of characters, and I'm looking forward to the future seasons of the show. If you enjoyed this review, I really hope that you subscribe and join me for future reviews and more Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms content.